Welcome back to the Morning Kickoff Show. I'm your host, Matt Witt. Well, the Vikings fall to the Seattle Seahawks in the first preseason game, 21-13 over in Seattle. This came after the Minnesota Vikings blew a 10-0 lead, and we learned a lot. Ty Chandler puts an end to the running back debate if there was one in the first place. Plus, Jordan Addison is as cool as a Minnesota winter. And Minnesota Vikings backup offensive line is about as weak as people who drink decaf coffee. Let's get into this. Number one, if it wasn't obvious already, of course, there is no competition at running back. Dalvin Cook was undeniably the biggest loss the Vikings had this offseason, but there is no debate as to who is going to replace Dalvin Cook. The truth is, you cannot replace Dalvin Cook, and in all honesty, the Vikings are going to be fine. We see Ty Chandler once again lighting up the preseason. Ty Chandler led this team in all-purpose yards with 70. He also led this team in touches in Thursday night's game. So the debate has essentially come to rest. Alexander Mattison is the RB1, and between Ty Chandler and Kene Iwangu, that is the RB2 and 3. Now, we didn't get to see Kene Iwangu in this game. He did not play due to an undisclosed injury. However, he is also a lock to make the roster. And Iwangu is coming off of a season where he was a second-team All-Pro kick returner. So, in all honesty, we don't even want him to be our running back too. We want that man to be healthy. I don't know what this injury is, but we want him to be healthy so he can be taking these kick returns for us because he's the first good kick returner we've had since Cordero Patterson. Ty Chandler already looks like he's going to be the Minnesota Vikings MVP through the preseason. He was last year, and he looks like that once again. Ty Chandler, 5th-round draft pick out of UNC last year, is lighting up the preseason, and it's great to see a running back step into that role after we didn't get to see a lot of Ty Chandler his rookie season, and that was mostly due to just having Dalvin Cook actually play all 17 games, which was amazing, or be healthy for all 17 games, which was great, and we also got to see some Alexander Mattison action on top of that. I am not in the party where you say Mattison is as good as Dalvin Cook, or that Mattison is going to replace Dalvin Cook just fine. Nothing against these running backs. This is a pass-first team. The Vikings are going to be fine. There is no longer a debate as to who the running backs are going to be on this Vikings roster. Sorry, Vikings fans. For those of you who love Dalvin Cook, which is most of us, got a poster of him back here. Not going to come back to Minnesota quite yet. Number two, Minnesota Vikings need help at offensive line. Also, it didn't come by much of a surprise that the Vikings offensive line is just not great. Now, I'm not going to overreact for preseason, but I will say we have to face the facts here. Some of these offensive linemen we saw in Thursday night's game, we are going to have to see in the regular season. And for that reason, you got players like Christian Darrisaw, Brian O'Neill. These guys make arguably the greatest offensive tackle duo in the league right now. Yes, I said it. They are arguably the greatest tackle duo in the league, but they both have suffered with injuries recently. And hate to be the bearer of bad news, but when you suffer with an injury, you usually suffer with more injuries. So for that reason, we are going to have to see some of these guys step up. Ed Ingram also played, who is likely going to be our starting guard this season if the Vikings end up don't signing an offensive lineman, which would be honestly kind of a surprise after the game that we just saw, that the Vikings still do not sign an offensive lineman. You have Risner, who came in, visited the team, and yet has yet to sign a contract with the Minnesota Vikings. We saw rookie Jaren Hall come in and played the entire second half, who was just running for his life. Now, it was a little odd to see Jaren Hall escape the pocket as much as he did, because it's not very often you see players wear Vikings uniforms, quarterbacks wear Vikings uniforms, who can run like Jaren Hall can, and just couldn't get rid of the ball. He got sacked twice in this game on top of this. Just a not so great day for Jaren Hall when you just put in the circumstance that he was in this game. Now, Jaren Hall, that pass to N'Keal Harry. Okay, N'Keal Harry. I don't know if he's going to make the roster, but that was one of the greatest catches we have seen in preseason throughout the last couple years. And we're going to get into great catches because this was not the only one. I am excited for these Minnesota Vikings wide receivers this upcoming season. And now for Nick Mullens. I love Nick Mullens. Now the best quarterback in the NFC North to wear number 12. Thank you, Aaron Rodgers, for leaving. Okay, Nick Mullens did everything he can to put an end to the quarterback debate on this backup quarterback debate on this Minnesota Vikings roster. Mullens went 14 for 20 and also had a passing touchdown, rushed 2 times for 9 yards. I mean, what do you have to see? You got a quarterback who is running. You got a quarterback who is not just running, but lowering the shoulder. Great to see for Nick Mullens. He also went 6 for 6 on the only touchdown drive of the game for the Minnesota Vikings. Hats off to you. 6 for 6, you're completing passes to Ty Chandler. You're completing backup passes to Brandon Powell. You're completing a 23-yard pass to Jordan Addison, rookie, who we're going to get into more of Jordan Addison. You complete a pass to Reagor, and you finish it off with a 4-yard touchdown pass to Nick Muse, which was a dot right over the defender. Hats off to Nick Mullens. I feel like he's done everything he has to do through this point to solidify himself as the backup quarterback for the Vikings. Now, I want to see Jaron Hall be as successful as the next guy, but it's going to take time. And we saw this in this game. At the start, Jaren Hall was just escaping the pocket too soon. He couldn't get rid of the ball. He did have a couple great passes against third-string defensive players. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens with Jaren Hall. I want him to be in the Vikings for the near future. We will likely see him on the preseason or on the practice squad his rookie season, and maybe get to see more Jaren Hall down the line. Hopefully it's not a Kellen Mond situation. Really looking forward to this guy. Number 4, Jordan Addison is an absolute hawk. I couldn't think of a player who fits more perfectly on this Minnesota Vikings offense. You have a player who is incredibly fast. You have a player who can adjust to make incredible catches, and this 21-year-old made the catch of the game. But it didn't even count. I mean, it's preseason. I don't care if it counts or not. That was an incredible catch. That's all I needed to see. That's all I needed to see in this game. Jordan Addison is going to fit like a glove on this Minnesota Vikings offense, and he's probably not going to have a 1,000-yard season his rookie season, but is going to look good. Only because you have players, Justin Jefferson, best at his position, TJ Hawkinson, arguably top 3 at his position. You have 2 guys who are likely going to eat up a lot of those passing yards on your offense. Jordan Addison is a absolute hawk. Now, the only reception he had in this game was that 22-yard reception, but that was thrown behind him. It didn't even have to be a reception. He adjusted himself to receive the ball, and again, like I mentioned, this dude is fast, he's shifty, he's going to fit on this Minnesota Vikings offense. Kevin O'Connell is going to use him, and this is going to be a fun player to watch. I'm so excited to see more of Jordan Addison this preseason, and of course, in the regular season. Number 5, this secondary just looked out of place. This is probably the thing that I believe Vikings fans are just overreacting the most on, is this Minnesota Vikings secondary. You gotta remember, not only is this preseason, but these guys are all adjusting to an entirely new defense. The biggest move this Vikings made this offseason, in my opinion, was bringing in Brian Flores as their defensive coordinator. And you can already notice this Vikings secondary being more aggressive. Last season, we saw too much of this too high zone shell defense that left the middle part of the field wide open. And now you see players like Josh Metellus, Lewis Cine, these safeties all over the field is just a great sight to see. Now, obviously, there needs to be better communication in this Vikings defense, and that's going to come with time. It's not something that you see right off the rip in preseason and overreact on. But I will say, Andrew Booth Jr. had a rough night. Now, we haven't got to see a lot of Andrew Booth Jr. his rookie season, and we really haven't got to see a lot of him at all because of injuries. Now, I'm not going to overreact and say Andrew Booth Jr. bust like a lot of people, but I will say that was probably the worst night we could have seen from Booth Jr. On top of this, you saw players like Kalen Barnes let up these were 2 of the worst touchdowns in this game. The easiest touchdowns given to the Seattle Seahawks was that from ABJ and Barnes. So again, I'm not overreacting from preseason, but I will say we learned a lot in this game. We did. First of all, I didn't even mention it, the penalties. All right, again, it's preseason. You're going to have more penalties than you are in the regular season. It's preseason. Your secondary is not going to look like they will when they play together for a long time. But those are the 2 things you need to work on the most. Easily the 2 things you need to work on the most. And then third, I already mentioned it, but this offensive line. Bring in new guys. All right, there's guys out there. You don't need to have these guys coming out there where Jaren Hall has 3-step drop back passes, where Jaren Hall escapes the pocket when he wasn't even under pressure in the first place. Jaren Hall just had no faith in our Vikings offensive line, and honestly, I don't blame him. Looking on Nick Mullens as well, it'd be nice to see these guys get more protection. Our Vikings starting offensive line is just fine. It's the exact same starting offensive line we had last year, assuming Ed Ingram does start at right guard. That's the only question mark right now. Regardless of who starts at right guard, the Vikings offensive line is the same as it was last year, but now you got Christian Darrisaw another year under his belt. Now you got Ezra Cleveland, Garrett Bradbury. These guys have another year under their belt. But I will say that is what we learned throughout this first game. Great. Jordan Addison, incredible game. Jalen Reagor led the team in receiving yards, 55 in the first half. Hats off to Jalen Reagor. Good to see him having a great day. N'Keal Harry, incredible catch. And of course, our tight ends were great. The Vikings started out with 2 tight ends set. Looked pretty solid. You had Johnny Munt out there. You had Josh Oliver out there. You got Nick Muse getting a touchdown reception. Good to see these tight ends looking well as well. At the end of the day, of course, it's preseason. Who cares that we lost? But we did learn quite a bit. And honestly, the good might outweigh the bad. I do like Ty Chandler. I do like Jordan Addison. Pretty good first game. Minnesota Vikings. We'll be back. We're winning game 2.